Hey guys, so today I'm gonna show you guys how to make a Danish, which is a type of pastry. And you will notice that the recipe title is overnight cherry Danish recipe. It does not have to be overnight. That's just so that you can put your dough in the refrigerator so it gets cold. So if you leave it for about a couple hours, it should be fine. You don't have to wait overnight. One of the things that you have to do is separate your eggs. So I'm going to show you guys really quickly how to separate your egg white from your egg yolk, because in this recipe, all we're using is the yolk. Okay, so I'm just going to tilt my screen so you guys can see what I'm doing. We need 3. I already did 2. I'm going to show you how to do the last one. Just going to crack it like you normally would. And then just kind of go back and forth so that the white separates from the yolk. And you're going to try not to break your yolk. Now we don't need the whites for anything, so you could do whatever you want with them, make an egg white omelet or whatever. But that's how you do it. And they could be room temperature or cold. It really doesn't matter for this recipe because it uses cold butter. So you are going to have some cold ingredients in there. But like I said, it really doesn't matter. Okay, so we will pick up with this in a minute. Okay, so in my liquid measuring cup, I have 1/4 cup of milk, and then I have 3/4 cup of half and half. And to that, I'm going to add my sugar. So you guys will notice that some of these amounts seem kind of weird, and that's because it's cut in half. So that's why it says 1/6 cup of sugar. Probably nobody has a 6 cup of sugar measuring cup in their house. So that's about 3 tablespoons. It's actually a little bit more, but 3 is enough. That's what we're going to add. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my yeast right to this. So I'm going to mix it up first. I warmed this up for about a minute in the microwave. And we will take the temperature to make sure that it's not above 110. So it should be right around, actually 115 is okay if you have it at 115. But any hotter than that, then you have to worry about it killing the yeast. So this is perfect because it's at 110 right now. So I'm going to go ahead and add my 2 1/4 teaspoons or 2.5 teaspoons of active dry yeast, which if you're using a packet, the packets, it's just 1 packet. That's sufficient. So I'm going to add it to that and give it a nice little stir. Kind of mix it in there. And then, you know, this step isn't always completely necessary because you could always just mix your ingredients together to make sure that it's good. But I always like to proof it first just to make sure that it's still good to go. And then I won't have to worry about it not activating later on. Okay, so we're going to let that sit. You're also going to need 3 cups of flour and how much? A half cup of cold butter cubed, which ends up being 1 whole stick. So you're going to take your flour and your butter, and you're going to cut the butter in with the pastry blender, just like we did with the pie crust, because remember I told you guys that pies and pastries are very similar. So I'm going to get all of that stuff out, and then I'll show you guys how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and measure out my flour. So we need 3 cups. And the reason why we're only making half recipe is because this does actually make quite a few danishes. So you don't want to have a whole crazy amount of them, right? So there's 2. And this dough actually ends up being pretty sticky too, just so you guys know. You're probably going to need extra flour when you roll it out. There's my 3 cups of flour. Set that off to the side. And it takes a teaspoon of salt. And then we're just going to mix it around, get it all combined, and then we will add our butter and cut it in with the pastry blender. So it's going to look similar to when we made a pie crust. However, there's not as much fat in this as we had in the pie crust. So I have my nice cold chunks of butter. I cubed them up. Remember, that just makes it easier to cut it in. You don't want to start with a full stick and then have a hard time cutting it in, right? That would be crazy. Okay, so I'm just going to toss that in there. Kind of get it coated in my flour. So I'm just doing the same kind of thing that I did when I made the pie crust. I'm just twisting my pastry blender in there. And the reason why I'm using this bowl is because this is a dough that's going to be kneaded like the bread dough was. So it is a pastry, but it's almost like a cross between a pastry and a bread dough just because of the way that we're making it. It has yeast and everything. There are Danish recipes where they're a little bit more complex and you don't really need the dough. What you end up doing is you're making a laminated dough. So what that is it's kind of a dough like this. And then you have like squares of butter, almost like a sheet of butter. So you roll the dough out and then you put the butter on top of it and you fold the dough over the butter. So almost like an envelope. And then you roll it out again and then you fold it and you roll it. And it's this whole process where you do that a couple times and then you put it in the refrigerator, you let it rest. You do the whole process over again. And then you put it in the refrigerator and let it rest again, and then you do one more time. But this is just a quicker way. Some people, don't want to spend all that time making a pastry because it is a kind of long process. It's not difficult, it's just long. And this is much quicker, which is why we do this one in class, because we can't make something that takes all week between the rolling and the folding. It just wouldn't be good in the fridge anymore. So, okay, so I have my ingredients all cut up in here. The next thing that we need to do is we're going to add our yeast mixture, which I don't know if you guys can see it, but see all that foam right there? Let's see if I can put this down so you guys can see it. Okay, it got really foamy, so I know it's good. I'm going to put this in here also with the egg yolks, and then I'm just going to stir it. Actually going to put it in my stand mixer and let it go with the dough hook. So we'll be right back. All right, so I'm going to add my yeast mixture right in the middle there. All that foamy goodness. And then I'm going to add my 3 egg yolks. So we know that eggs are going to help bind our ingredients together, which it's going to do here. Another reason why we just use the yolk and not the whole egg in this is because the yolk provides fat. So mostly the yolk is fat. There's a little bit of protein, but pastries are usually something with quite a bit of fat. So that's just going to add to it and make it more of a rich dough and give it some more flavor and texture. Okay, so I'm going to put this here. So if you don't have a stand mixer at home and this is something you want to make, at this point you would just use a spoon, a wooden spoon, or some kind of mixing spoon. So I'm gonna let that go. And like I said, it's going to be pretty sticky. It's not going to be as bad once you put it in the refrigerator. It has a chance to get cold again. And then when you go to roll it out and actually form the danishes, you're probably going to need some extra flour. But you might even have to add a little extra at this point when it's done. Because if it's too sticky, you won't even be able to work with it. Okay, so I'm going to let this mix. And the recipe says to knead the dough until it forms an elastic dough ball. And then you're going to get a gallon-sized bag. If you don't have a gallon-sized bag, you can just spray whatever bowl you use to mix it in. Spray it with cooking spray or put oil in it so that it doesn't stick. And then you're going to cover it up and refrigerate it for at least a few hours or overnight. And then the next day, I will tell you guys about the next day in the next video. But what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be rolling it out and showing you how to cut it and shape it together so that it ends up as a Danish. And then I'll show you guys how to fill it and stuff like that. This is coming together nicely. It doesn't look too sticky, but that's pretty much it for the dough itself. It's really easy to make. If you've made bread, it's just the same. Okay, so I actually had to add about another half cup of flour because it was really, really sticky. So I have my gallon bag right here. I already sprayed it with my cooking spray. And I'm just going to transfer my ball of dough from my mixer to my bag. You guys can see it's still sticky. Like you can see it on my hands, and it should be somewhat sticky because you don't want it to be dry. Like I said, this is a pastry, it's not bread dough, so it's going to be a little bit different. Try to get all your stuff off there. And then I'm just going to stick it in my fridge, let my gluten relax, and I will continue in a few hours. Okay, so if you guys have questions about how I did any of that, please reach out to me through email or we can do Google Meet, but that's about it for the dough, okay?